What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Black Ops 4 multiplayer. In today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the next sniper rifle, and this is the Outlaw. So first up, as always, let's have a look at the damage, and quite surprisingly, the Outlaw has the exact same damage as the Paladin and the Koshka at 140. However, just like with those other guns, the thing that determines your one-shot kill area is the multiplier zones, which we'll have a look at in just a little bit. Our rate of fire with the Outlaw is 88 rounds per minute, which is by far the fastest when it comes to the one-shot kill sniper rifles, and with rapid fire we can bump this all the way up to 109 rounds per minute, which is very quick for a gun that has a one-shot kill potential. Our standard aim down sight time with the Outlaw is exactly the same as the Koshka at 375 milliseconds, but with quick draw we can reduce that down to 325 milliseconds. As for our one-shot kill areas, this is what really keeps the Outlaw in check and actually makes the Outlaw quite weak. Without any attachments, the only place you'll get a one-shot kill is going to be to the upper chest, neck, or head. This thing is a hit marker machine in core game modes. I find that I get a ton of hit markers with this. Even when I think I'm aiming for the upper torso, I still often get hit markers with it. But just keep in mind you can use the high caliber attachment on the Outlaw, which will very slightly increase your one-shot kill range to the upper mid-torso hitbox. So you'll still get a hit marker to the stomach, but if you're aiming right for the middle of the torso, you will now get a one-shot kill. But keep in mind, shoulder shots are still going to be a hit marker, and therefore even with the high caliber attachment, when I'm playing in core game modes, I often still get hit markers with the Outlaw. So this does make it quite weak in core game modes. However, when you factor in the rate of fire, making the one-shot kill area any larger would be very dangerous when it comes to weapon balance. As for the Outlaw against armor, unlike the other sniper rifles we covered so far, the Paladin and the Koshka, armor actually does have a very serious negative effect when you're trying to use an Outlaw. If you're using the Outlaw without high caliber, you will now only be able to get a one-shot kill on an armor user if you shoot them in the head. If, however, you are using high caliber, what this will do is it will give you the standard one-shot kill multiplier, so it won't give you that upper mid-torso multiplier one-shot kill, but you will still be able to get a one-shot kill as if you had no attachments and that person did not have armor. So they essentially cancel each other out. As for hipfire, as you can see here, the Outlaw has the same hipfire spread as all of the other sniper rifles in the game, and we don't have any option to use laser sight. This brings us to the amount of time you can hold your breath for, which is actually standard. It's the same as all of the other sniper rifles at 4 seconds. During this 4 seconds, you will be completely stable. Now, when you're not holding your breath, the idle sway on the Outlaw is actually very reasonable, especially compared to the Koshka and the Paladin. The Outlaw has very little idle sway, and we do have the ability to use stabilizer as well, which will reduce that idle sway even further, and I quite like this about the Outlaw. This is one of the redeeming qualities about this gun. Even though it is generally fairly weak, I really like the fact that it has very little idle sway. Getting into our magazine, or in this case cylinder capacity, we have a great capacity at 9 rounds with 27 total starting ammo, which is excellent for a sniper rifle that has a one-shot kill potential. And we also have the option to use hybrid mags, which will bump that up to 15 rounds with 45 total starting ammo. This is very respectable, and generally speaking, you shouldn't have to run scavenger on this, unlike something like the Paladin, where if you're going on a streak with the Paladin, you typically will want scavenger active. As for our reload add time, which is the amount of time it takes to reload without any unnecessary animations, this is quite slow for the sniper rifles at 2.67 seconds. Fortunately, the hybrid mag attachment will also reduce your reload time down to 1.77 seconds, which is still a bit on the slow side, but it is much more reasonable at least. Moving on to our sprint out time, this is actually a little bit slower than the other sniper rifles that we've covered so far at 325 milliseconds, but what this means is even if you're using quick draw, the sprint out time is perfectly fine as is, because it's equal to the aim down sight time with quick draw, and therefore if you are coming out of sprint, you won't be able to get fully aim down sight for 325 milliseconds anyways, and therefore you don't need a faster sprint out time. However, I will still point out if you're using gung ho, you can reduce the sprint out time down to 250 milliseconds, but this will only apply if you're hip firing, which I definitely wouldn't recommend with this gun. As for the amount of time it takes to swap to a pistol with the Outlaw, without dexterity it will take you 625 milliseconds, which is pretty standard for the sniper rifles, and with dexterity it will be a little bit faster at 510 milliseconds, which again is fairly standard for the sniper rifles that we've looked at so far. Our movement speed with the Outlaw is actually a little bit faster than the Koshka and the Paladin at 97%, but our aim down sight stray speed is exactly the same as the Paladin and Koshka at 40%, and with the stock attachment we can bump that all the way up to 65%. So that pretty much covers it for the standard stats for the Outlaw, but we do have an operator mod for this, and this is the one saving grace I feel for the Outlaw when it comes to core game modes. This operator mod is called the Bolt Cylinder, and what it'll do is it actually turns the gun into a 3-round burst, but it also reduces your damage so you can't get a 1-bullet kill. So with this, our damage is reduced to 81, which means it's going to be a standard 2-shot kill anywhere in the body in core game modes. There's no need to think about multipliers or anything like that because it's just going to be a 2-shot kill even to the hand or to the toe. Now the rate of fire of this burst is 800 rounds per minute, which is pretty solid, but there is a very large burst delay at 1 second. This means it's very powerful at getting 1 burst kills, however it is unforgiving. If you miss that burst, it's going to take quite some time to get that second burst off, and against any sort of a decent player, you will usually be dead within this time. Now if you want to mitigate this burst delay a little bit, you can use rapid fire, which won't change the rate of fire within your burst, but it will change that burst delay quite noticeably down to 700 milliseconds. As a result, if you are using the operator mod on this, I would highly recommend that you use rapid fire as well. Now, since this is now a 2-shot kill rather than a 1-shot kill, I thought I'd just share the time to kill potential with this, which is insanely fast at 75 milliseconds. Just for comparison, most of the standard guns in this game will kill in somewhere between 300 to 400 milliseconds, so this is insanely fast compared to those. Now getting into the other attachments for the Outlaw, let's start it off with the optical attachments. Personally, I think the default sight is just fine if you're trying to use this more so as a traditional sniper. However, I do like the versatility of the recon sight. The ability to zoom in and out is great in my opinion. The iron sights, on the other hand, I really don't like the looks of on the Outlaw and tend to stay away from that. Same thing goes with the threat detector, it's just not for me. But finally, we have the reflex sight, and I really enjoy using this with the reflex sight. I'll treat it more so as like a 1-shot kill assault rifle and try to keep my gunfights at mid-range. As for the other attachments, rapid fire is excellent. This just allows you to get that follow-up shot much faster. Like I said, it's also great in combination with the operator mod. Quick draw obviously is also a really good attachment, allows you to aim down sight faster, which is very important with sniper rifles. With the suppressor, I just wanted to point out, suppressor has no negative effect whatsoever on the Outlaw based on all of the recent testing that I've done. It doesn't affect your one-hit kill potential, it doesn't affect your range, it just keeps you off the radar. As for grip, I did want to point out grip is completely useless on the Outlaw. Right here is a test that I did, even with rapid fire and no grip, without holding my breath, I was putting the bullet in the exact same hole every single shot, firing as fast as I possibly can. So therefore, grip is completely useless. Unless you're using the operator mod, it will keep your burst slightly tighter. But having said that, it's really not necessary by any means, so I would say don't waste a point on it. When it comes to high caliber, if you're playing in core game modes, I think this is an excellent choice. Not only because it very slightly increases your one-shot kill potential, it's more so the ability to counter armor users, because if you don't have high caliber, the only way you're getting that one-shot kill against armor is with a headshot. For stabilizer on the Outlaw, I don't think it's necessary by any means. I think the idle sway is just fine without stabilizer, but if you wanted to have it on there as well, it definitely does help a little bit. As for stock, generally speaking, I don't use stock on sniper rifles, but I often like to combine this with a reflex sight. So if I am using a class with a reflex sight on the Outlaw, I will often run stock as well. And finally, this just leaves us with the hybrid magazine. And personally, I would say most of the time, hybrid mags are completely unnecessary. But if I am using the operator mod, this is also another great attachment to combine with that, simply because you will be empty within 3 bursts if you're not using the hybrid mag, whereas with the hybrid mag, you will get 5 bursts out of it. So finally, let's get into a few great example classes I have for you guys with the Outlaw. And first up, I wanted to cover one with the operator mod. This is probably my favorite way to run this gun in core game modes, simply because I'm using the operator mod on this, and without that operator mod, it's a hit marker machine, whereas with it, it's a very good sniper rifle. So with this, obviously, we have the operator mod, we've got rapid fire, as well as the hybrid mags. Our secondary is an RK7. Honestly, you can use whatever pistol you want. I just decided to throw the RK7 on here. Our gear is going to be acoustic sensor, which I find is excellent when you're sniping. Just gives you that little bit of an indication when enemies start to get close to you, so you can either swap to your pistol or pre-aim the area. Our perks are going to be dexterity, so we can swap to our pistol a little bit faster, and dead silence, just because I hate hearing my own footsteps. So that's the first class, and the class that I would prefer using in core game modes if I want to be more of a traditional sniper, hanging back and picking people off. Next is my slightly more aggressive class that I like using. This one's great for core or hardcore game modes. With this, we're using the reflex sight with rapid fire, stock, and quick draw. Once again, our secondary is going to be any one of the pistols that you want. I threw the Mozu on here. Our gear is once again going to be acoustic sensor, which I find to be very helpful on a class like this. And once again, our perks are going to be exactly the same with dexterity and dead silence. With this class, I really like keeping my enemies at sort of mid-range gunfights. I can use that stock attachment to strafe back and forth to evade shots while hitting shots of my own. And the nice thing about this is even if you get a hit marker, you can get that follow-up shot off very, very quickly because you're using rapid fire. Now, since the Outlaw is a gun that I'll typically only use in hardcore game modes, I did want to share one more class with you guys, and this is just sort of a standard Outlaw class that's best suited to hardcore modes. I wouldn't use this class in core simply because it would be getting a lot of hit markers. But with this one, we're just using rapid fire as well as quick draw for our attachments. We're using the standard scope, which is really nice so we can hang back and pick people off at longer ranges. Our secondary is going to be the Strife pistol with the FMJ attachment. That's mainly just because we had an extra point, and FMJ is excellent against armor users in hardcore. Speaking of armor, that's going to be our gear for this one, just because it often allows you to soak up that one bullet, especially at those longer ranges when you're trying to pick people off. It will allow us to soak up a shot, which is often all you need to get behind cover. As for our perks, we're going to be using dexterity once again to swap to our pistol faster, dead silence because I hate hearing my own footsteps and like to hear enemy footsteps, and finally Team Link, which I think is an amazing perk for hardcore modes. Not so great in core, but when it comes to hardcore, it is very valuable to be able to know exactly where all of your teammates are just by seeing them through walls. And with that, that's going to wrap up today's gun guide on the Outlaw. As always, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the Outlaw? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's somewhere in between? Just let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Personally, I think this gun is very weak in core game modes. While it does have good handling and some good characteristics, the one-shot kill area is very, very small, which means there's a lot of frustrating situations where you just end up getting a hit marker, and when you're against decent players, you normally don't have time for that follow-up shot, even though you do have a pretty decent rate of fire with this. Having said that, I do feel like this is a difficult sort of gun to balance because, like I said earlier, if you increase that one-shot kill area too much, this gun would quickly become extremely overpowered. So I don't really know what I would like to be done with the Outlaw to make it more viable in core modes, but as it is right now, I would much rather just stick to using a Paladin with the stabilizer attachment. Also, before we wrap this up, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Yeah.